Right, we're checking in, Paul. Christina, before Paul jumps in, can you say good morning, hello to everybody? Because Paul just normally goes off on one.
Yeah, no problem. Good morning, everybody. This is Christina from Moodbeam. How are you all?
So fantastic. So Paul, since we're doing this differently, you can go straight at it now, then, can't you? Go on.
No, I'm saying good morning.
Okay.
I get shouted at every week for not saying good morning. Good morning, Christina.
Right. Good morning, Paul. You're right, Pat.
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Right then, let's go. Right. Okay. Christina is the director and co-founder of Moodbeam, a groundbreaking company whose aim is to turn the world of emotional development upside down. Her creation allows a completely new way in showing how we feel and see how they feel. Prior to wearing...
Where have you got all this from, Paul?
Can't tell you.
Check if it's right?
No. I just know it's right. I did it. Prior to her invention, she spent 20 years as an experienced journalist and freelance public relations specialist with a demonstrated history of working in the design industry. Skilled in copywriting, web content, writing business development, event management, and editing strong media and communication. Professional with journalism-focused communication and media studies. So
Paul,
what an intro.
I need to lie down. Christina, all at 26, that is some career.
I was going to say, I don't look bad for 86, do I?
I could tell more, but I want Christina to tell us all about the rest.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. That's quite an introduction, isn't it, really? Before Moodbeam, I was a journalist for 20 years, came over from Northern Ireland to do my journalism degree down in Surrey, and I've never permanently lived back home. That's no reflection on the country. It was just there weren't many opportunities back when I was 18, and I then met a Yorkshireman, and bringing up a family here, I haven't looked back really. But yes, Moodbeam came into my life 4 years ago after I created it because my daughter was struggling at school, and I wanted to really keep connected with her from afar and see how she was doing, and that was the idea behind Moodbeam.
And I think, Paul, we share a massive passion with the technology. We love technology, don't we, Paul?
We certainly do.
And we're very passionate about well-being and mental health. And I think the product you've created is tremendous. We're massive fans. Man's charging. Look, where's Man? Look, charging this morning.
Man's on.
Computer. Man's charging.
My kids talk about the Moodbeam dab these days. Everybody's wearing one.
Like this. Paul, can we have a dab, please? Yeah, no, go on, Paul.
How do you do it? Is that how you do it?
It's sort of like, oh, don't. My kids will be like, oh, Mum, please don't. But it's something like that. Yeah.
And I think, Paul, what would you say? Why are you such a fan of that technology?
The reason I'm a fan of the technology is that it tracks your moods in the day, and it can pinpoint a part of the day where you could be unhappy every single day of the week. If it was me going to work that I don't really enjoy and I absolutely hate driving there, I could be sad. Bang, I press my Moodbeam, or it could be if I was a youngster at lunchtime, if I was getting bullied, the same time every day. A parent can pinpoint that situation and then you can tackle it. I think it's absolutely fantastic concept, and we've been using it for months because Christina gladly gave us some at Andy's Man Club, didn't she? So it's fantastic. Yeah.
And I think Christina, I think technology, that's always, I love solving problems. That's one of my favourite. And I think as humans, when we come together as teams, we can solve some amazing problems, can't we? I think when we put great process and great technologies together, the results just like your technology, it does save lives, doesn't it? And I think for me, I always remember using it, and I've always done different things for my mental health. So I like to meditate. And I've found that when I get very stressed, I like to write loads of notes in my journals. So I get my journals out and I write things down and I get things out of my head. And I've always done that. And what I found really interesting is a couple of times I'd used it, and when I look back at the end of the week doing a review in the app to see, if I'd been low or high, or whatever context you want to put that in, there's a couple of points when I've been blue, and I'm sat there at the end of the week thinking, I'm never blue. I'm never ever blue. What's going on? But when I really sat there and questioned it, why I was feeling like I was, there was actually something that I'd been carrying for a bit of time. It just meant that I need to reach out to a certain person and go down this route. And what I didn't realise was that sort of emotion had been, how long had it been sat there? How long had it been coming up? How long had it been driving different areas? And I think more so than now, in the current situation we're in, we need to be talking more and we need to be aware of our moods. And, what would you say about that at the moment with the old, before we get into our questions, the whole fake news, coming from media, coming from that part of the world, is how do people make sense of that world out there at the moment?
Well, this is the thing. And, it's easy for me to criticize sort of how the media have handled it so far. I think nobody's really known how to be objective when it is subjective, when it's about everybody and everything. But I think it hasn't helped that if you are struggling already with triggers and things that sort of set you off, when you switch on the TV and you want to feel like you're being informed and you end up even more heightened and worried, it's not a good place to be. I think the other point to make as well about Moodbeam is that yes, I did create it because I had a problem that I wanted to solve, and a great many people do use it for that purpose. But equally for people like yourself and what I know of you who have a positive outlook, it's really reinforcing what that looks like for you person. It's almost compounding what your positive nature is. We have people who have never struggled or experienced anything in a negative way, but they never want to. They want to be able to try and have an early intervention tool, something that's with them, like a second skin. It's almost like a Fitbit for the mind. You don't wear a Fitbit because you're really overweight and don't care about yourself. It's the complete opposite. And we really want to nurture this idea that Moodbeam's exactly the same. It's to have a positive, healthy mind, but also to allow you to cope in times of heightened stress and struggle. And right now is that. But what's really lovely at the moment with Moodbeam is that we created it as a family who wanted to keep connected. And what's happening now is that more and more families are embracing that, and they're gifting it to loved ones, or they're using it for themselves in self-isolation, or it's the working family. It's translated very easily into working lives, and how companies are trying to work remotely at the minute. And we're working with some of the biggest companies sort of in the UK at the minute, because they're having to work completely differently, and it's really scary and it's really challenging. But if you can try and keep connected and keep checked in, and we can discuss different elements of the app, but within the app you're able to set up prompts up to 5 times a day, and some companies are using that as a check-in. So like it'll vibrate on your wrist and you press it and you go, actually, I'm okay. I've got a good solid hour's work done and I'm starting to work remotely and it's okay. Or if you are really struggling, they're able to find that out sooner and go, okay, maybe Bob's not ready for this. Somebody support Bob more, or actually Mary's doing really well. Okay, we'll take her onto the front line for a while and try and adjust and pivot that way. So we're really pleased.
And I think on that, I think that's where I really fell in love with the product. I fell in love with the product in 2 ways, Christina. In one way, it was what that insight it gave into me. 3 ways really. That insight. Another thing, just trying, anyone who's listening, it also, my wife has battled with mental health for years. She runs a ladies group, the first ladies group in it, Paul. People want to check out in Hull. And what was interesting was she was able to see my stats as well. And I think because I always try and bounce out of a room, that's not always great sometimes, because sometimes when I look back how I've handled situations, for me to cope, I have to look on the positive side. It's just the way my brain works, but that's not always great for other people. It's sort of like I'm not dealing with a problem. And I think what was interesting for me and my wife was she got an insight into me being low. And what was really interesting is I'd have never spoke to her about that, because the stats are like we know, don't we, Paul? Men don't talk.
Yeah. No.
And we don't talk, and it's just one of them given things. We have this outlook on the world, don't we? And it's all changing. And I think what it did was when I came in from the office, because I'd journaled in it, and it was quite funny at the time. I didn't know that because I'd shared my data with my wife. I didn't know she could see my journals. I didn't know how far it went. I just did it, And I know that can all be customized and changed in millions of different ways. But I'm so glad that it was so open, because what it did was, when I came in, it started a conversation from my wife with me about how I'm feeling about a situation that she had insight into. She had analytics on it. She knew what the root cause of the problem was before. And I think it's just amazing when you look at it that way.
Thank you, because we have worked for 4 years on this to really have that effect, to be honest. So we could have got this out sooner. We could have done this. We could have done a quick fix job, but that's like an elastoplast. It falls off when wet. Yeah. And what we wanted to do was build a technology that was robust but simple to use, simple to see, simple to share. And the sharing mechanism has been really powerful for a lot of people. Obviously, within organizations, we now are looking at the option to switch off and keep the journal private, if so be it, so that you can have anonymized data, so that you can see like the happiness heat map of the organization, for example. So journal entries at the moment can be shared in a personal capacity, and when you've pressed it, why you've pressed it, and that's a really, really powerful mechanism, because I think it's the non-verbal element to begin with. The bit where we stumble as a human race is that if you've got to sit in front of somebody and explain why something happened, 9 times out of 10 you ain't going to do that. Whereas at least if non-verbally you can communicate that, and somebody else gets to find out what that looks like before they see you the next time, they can start that conversation and go, I didn't realize you felt really bad about such and such. And I think it's that whole ability to make it what you want to make it for you. We've got a series of life hacks for Moodbeam coming up, and that's trying to keep something that's lighthearted but actually really powerful, to connect with our community and our followers. Is like, from one guy who's now at home when usually he's away by 6:30 in the morning, his alarm goes off, drives his wife crackers. They start off having an argument first thing in the day, and you can imagine it's not a good way to start the day. Whereas now he uses his first prompt as his silent alarm clock. So when it vibrates on his wrist, he can wake up, leave her be in bed for another hour or whatever, and start his working day. And that to me is massive, because he has made it his own. He's decided that this is going to make my life a little bit better every day, each morning. And that's just one thing amongst many. Obviously, you've got the sharing that you've talked about, so you can share your data with a loved one or a colleague or whoever you want to. You can simply do that within the app. But it's also the whole ability to journal. I love technology, but I also love paper. Yeah. And the idea of Moodbeam, it's just brilliant, isn't it? It's tangible and it's physical, and it's being able to write down how you feel, whether that's retrospectively, and that being able to transfer that into the app and sit there and go, okay, I'm going to look at these today, or if it's every 3 days, what was happening? Yeah, okay, add that. Having something physical and tangible, we sort of also underestimated. From the trials, we knew early on that we had to have something that was on your wrist at all times, because if it was in the bottom of your bag, you didn't reach in. It's got to be in the moment. It's got to be something that can be pressed anytime, anywhere. But when we've spoken to people who do know what they're talking about, and this is another point to make, is that we've never professed to be clinicians or mental health practitioners, or we're just people who have created technology that shows what that looks like. But to actually have something physical and tangible on your wrist and be able to press something, it's almost like pressing a button to say, right, somebody's going to find out, or I'm going to have a look at that. And actually it releases, endorphins. Apparently it automatically raises your ability to cope. And just being able to sort of complete that tick, has got people out of the door when they've sat at home. We've seen that even at the trial stage. So we know it's taken 4 years. We know the urgency's been there, but it's now when we start to get this feedback that we realise that, it's what we're doing is a good starting point, and we can only build on that.
I like the way that you're saying you're talking to a lot of big businesses at the minute, because I can see with the work I do in the community and the work I do with some businesses is that some people who are working from home, some don't want to work from home. Some would prefer to go to the office. Some have got childcare issues where they're trying to work and they've got the kids running around the feet. But some people actually do like working from home, and it really does suit them. So having the Moodbeam, you can probably see when a guy or a lady is struggling at work, what time of day they're struggling at work. The bosses can have a look at that and say, look, she's really strong from home. And I've been trying to push where in companies got to reset expectations because of staff working at home. And also, I believe that all employees should have work buddies. So you should have 3 or 4 people in a little group that are checking in on each other most of the day. And if you had the Moodbeams, that would make that so much easier, because if you've got a buddy, you can see when they're struggling in the day, when they're positive, vice versa. So you can check in at that particular time of day when they're feeling, when you see the information that you've got, they can check in on that person at that particular time of day and pick the spirits up. I think it's brilliant.
Thank you. Like, as I say, only time will tell.
Yeah.
I personally believe that, post-COVID, and we will get there, everybody. Let's just, keep positive. We will get to a point where the risk is hopefully lowering. But I think there'll be a lot of learnings from this period in time. I think the new normal is here to stay. I think actually, and you've touched on a really good point there, is that like Moodbeam perhaps isn't for everybody. It's totally personality dependent. Some people will love the whole virtual working from home aspect, and they may continue on for the rest of their working lives. Others may absolutely hate it, or just find a really hard time getting used to it. But we're talking to companies who, and they're small companies, they're one-man bands, right, SMEs, right through to large corporations, but some of them have been branch-based. How do you deal with your customers when you're normally in a branch? In the construction industry, and is a really good example, and they're very dynamic. I have to take my hat off to them. They've been how we're working together is because we're latching on to existing expertise. We're working with drivers who have worked within the industry for 15, 20 years, and they know the frustrations and they know the worries and the questions, and we're helping them create a level playing field so that, for example, the guys in the groundworks feel just as valued as the girls and guys in the cabins and the architects and the black hats. Everybody for once actually thinks that they've got a choice and have an opinion. And I think if we can carry that mentality through, that there's no caste system, there's no class system in terms of working, everybody should have that opportunity to speak up or say, actually, I've had a really good idea. I think we should take the company in this direction. And almost this is an opportunity to sort of step back and see how everybody works together when they're not face to face. That we are now virtually, but when you're not face to face, you're not under pressure to go, yeah, I totally agree with that. Challenge the norm.
But what I think is, and I think this is, the way the world is working at the moment, we're currently reacting at the moment, aren't we? That's the challenge. I think it's a massive shock to the system, and I think what's such a big shock at the moment, is fear of the unknown. Everyone's scared of the unknown, and that is one of the biggest challenges we're seeing out there. And as humans, we like to have some form of control, Myself, as I keep mentioning, I've got journal after journal down here where I write notes and notes and notes and notes. And I know if I don't write my notes, I don't have no level of control. And we like to have control. And I think what's going on at the moment is we actually don't have any control. But what I do think, and you see it, throughout history, we're a human race that has, we've done some amazing things and will continue to do some amazing things. And I think it's going to reset the planet. It's like Mother Nature coming along and saying, the way you guys was doing this wasn't right. And don't get me wrong, I know there's going to be tragedy in there, and it's not going to be pretty, but I do think there is going to be some green shoots. And I think y'all just mentioned it there, we mentioned it off air. And I think you mentioned, happiness is the new currency, 100%, and I'd like to explore that a little bit between us three, because it's interesting, that we're all on here in terms of, so Christina, started a tech business around wellbeing. you didn't go to school and tell your teachers that that's what you're going to do. You had no idea, did you? Is that fair to say?
Completely and utterly.
Yeah, me running a technology business myself, I never had any, didn't want to do that at the time. Paul, you're doing mental health wellbeing and you're doing remote e-learning now, aren't you, Paul? It changes day by day.
Oh, I'm learning everything day by day. I would have never done this 3 weeks ago, never mind when I left school. When I left school, I was on the fishing trawlers. I was a trawlerman out of Hull. Left school with no qualifications at all. Now, I deliver mental health first aid courses, and I'm a qualified teacher. It's bonkers.
But the reason I'm calling that out is, I've studied change. I love change. I love change. I love human psychology. I love all different bits, and more so from my own journey of changing. I pivoted into a complete different industry, and thank God I did in some ways in the current light. But the flip side of it, though, which I'd say, and I want to call out all three of us on this, is we're doing a podcast now, and that's meant to be done for marketing and all these purposes. And we would mention this, Christine, haven't we? In terms of we've got a work persona and we've got a business persona. I mean, I'm sat here in my Ugg slippers. I'm nice and comfy. I'm sure you guys are. Yeah, we're all comfy.
Yeah.
I would get up and have this conversation like we have done with you guys. I do it all the time with Paul. I often nip over and see you, Christina. I do it for free, and I do it for free because I generally have a passion for connecting with people. I generally have a passion for learning. I generally have a passion for sharing knowledge, right? If that's called marketing, I've got the best job in the entire world, right? And I think the same, though, in terms of it for you, Paul, you've been delivering courses. What country was you dialed into this week? Where was you?
Albania and France.
Yeah, right. Delivering for a big organisation. And last week, though, Paul, given your mood and where you was at, you couldn't go out and deliver courses physically. No. Last week, let's talk through the way your mindset was last week about trying to deliver courses. Your full business model had gone where?
It had gone south, so now I've changed it, and we're doing distance learning now. So if it had been normal, I'd have been out and about delivering courses. It would never have got done. So because we're on lockdown, I thought we still got to push on. So hoping after all this, it'll be in a better position than it was before it started. Even because we've got people who want our courses, but obviously we can't do training at the minute. So I'm doing distance learning where you can do from your home at your own leisure. And if this hadn't have happened, it wouldn't have happened. So yeah,
I think you're both absolutely bang on what you're saying. Like, it came from my 12-year-old driving along on our last sort of school day a couple of weeks ago, and she sort of said something similar to you, Leon. She says, I think it's Mother Nature's way of saying, right, I've watched you make a big enough mess. Time to step in. You see the canals in Venice are clear for the first time ever. Emissions are down, no smog. The birds are singing. You see wildlife that you never see when you're out on a dog walk. And more to the point, and Jonathan's a great believer in this, and I back him on this, is that we've forgotten how to really communicate with each other. Yeah. And, warts and all is how we work these days. Instead of trying to get all polished up and wearing the best blouses and all of the rest of it, this is authentic. You're never going to get more authentic than right now. And the reason people are scared is because somebody's told them at some point in their life they're not good enough. Technology to a lot of people is still a bunch of geeks sitting coding. Excuse me, going back to World War II, where you had women having to take up tools and work out keyboards when the men were off fighting, right through to NASA scientists. Some of the most amazing black women in history were coding before they were even taught to knit. It's that whole mentality of being told you're not good enough and it's not a job for you. This is going to smack this right up the backside, because this is going to be a world where people can do anything. If you're a problem solver, you've probably done it already in this period of time. And really, it's all about living a new life. And it is happiness is the new currency, because money means nothing if you're not well and you're not focused and you're running a rat trap. It's got to be don't get me wrong, I'm not dissing the fact that people's businesses will go by the wayside. You know, something that people have worked for years to accomplish and just haven't got there, or having it stripped away from them. Families will be left devastated. You know, many lives won't be ever the same again. But what we can pick up from the ashes of this, hopefully, is a more robust nation who's willing to actually be really true to each other and work better with each other, and not say you're not good enough for that, or it's going to take you years to do that. If we can change our lives in 3 months, you can do nothing. You know,
I agree, and Paul, I was just going to pick up on and say is, I do think there is going to be devastation, but I think the other side of it, I think you know, I'm fighting to keep the business going. You'll be doing the same, Christina. Paul, you're doing the same. So every day we're reacting to daily, if not hourly, changes into the marketplace. Yeah. But I think the thing is, and I think the thing sort of stress on this, and I think I'm very blessed that I'm part of the Andy's Man Club. I think, Paul, over the last 3 years, what we've seen, we've seen problems. I don't think it gets any more traumatic than hearing someone say they want to take their own life, and watching that journey and watching someone else come back from that. Paul, speaking to you and other people, and also going on our own journeys. And I think the challenge is we've got to, and it's that word, we've got to be kind. We hear it marketed out there, and we hear it spoke out there, and I think amazing things happen when you do give for the right reasons. You do give love, you do give support, you do create, and I think a time. And we always say we can't connect the dots looking backwards. We know each other, Christina, from doing a talk, which actually happened from me being part of Andy's Man Club and all these other things, right? And the interesting bit, which is it's really ironic in a lot of ways. I originally got involved in Andy's Man Club, not to run a club, but to give it technology. That was my first route of call, to give it technology and help at a strategic level. But I got told to go away and run a club, and that's what we did. And what was amazing was I'd already built all the technology 3 years ago. I knew what they needed. They just didn't need it. And then when we needed it last week, we went live with all that technology, and the club's still around, didn't they, Paul?
380 odd men went online on Monday night, which was absolutely epic. And it was thanks to Leon and his team and the people behind the scenes at Andy's Man Club. It was just fantastic. And just last night, guys had quiz nights. And it's keeping some people who might be lonely and might be isolated and might not feel the best, actually spending an hour online with the technology somebody's created and coming off there absolutely buzzing, and it'll keep them going till next Monday night. And it's absolutely fantastic just what people can do when they get together and share ideas.
And I think the flip side, the spin-off, like we were saying though, and this is why I think the world can be amazing at times, is we did that and actioned that and got all that technology put in. Paul's been using this technology for quite a bit of time, doing the podcast and other bits, but he just didn't know he was using it. And then he had to get trained how to deliver the Andy's Man Club training and everything else. So that just happened. And the spin-off from it, after him doing all his own time to all that good thing, when he sat there last week, this week, and realised that he's got to deliver distance learning, the idea came to him, I've got the same technology, haven't I? I can do that. So, and I always think, as long as you do good in the world and you can surround yourself by good people, and even if you might be having a down day and you might not have that good people, there is community spirit out there, Paul. Do you want to kick on that?
Oh, there is community spirit out there, and we've known for a lot of time with Andy's Man Club that community spirit isn't dead. The way people have come out in the community and raised money for Andy's Man Club, raised awareness for Andy's Man Club, we've always known for the last few years that community spirit's been there, but now it's come on even more. Everybody knows community spirit's still there. Everybody knows that if they need anything, just shout and people will be there. And it's just fantastic to see. And people have helped me in the past, and I just like to give a little bit back now as well. And I just think community is out there. It's just everybody's been in their own little bubble, and what me and Leon was talking about the other days, it is a massive reset button, and the things I've missed most haven't cost a penny. seeing my grandkids, seeing my family, giving them a hug, giving them a kiss. And just things like that don't cost anything, but I miss them. And I think everybody will cherish the simple things in life more after all this. And let's not forget, it's only temporary. And
I think where I'm looping with that, Christina, is, you're now a fully fledged adopted Hullonian. You're one of our own now. We definitely say that, can't we, Paul? You're from Ezel Road, so if you say she's in, she's definitely in. But what would you say about community spirit in Hull? Obviously, from a business community side, because you've come in, you're part of the C4DI community. Talk. Anyone who's listening who don't know about Hull, coming from the Emerald Isle, what would you say?
I absolutely love it. I do. I suppose even though I've lived away from home 20 years, I don't forget what sort of people make me feel loved and nurtured. And that's the people of Hull, to be honest. Like, I've never had a bad experience. You say it like it is, and that saves a lot of dancing around. I think it's very like home in that respect, but there's an awful lot of love. And I think what I'm most proud of is feeling part of that community that stopped making Hull people feel like they're the underdogs. They're the absolute bloody heroes in all of this. The people who have been running businesses through wars, through recessions, and they're still there 100 years, 150 years on. I've got a lot of connections back in County Down who actually, a lot of their families came over to work on the trawler ships.
Yep.
And they actually brought up their children in Hull. So there's a very big connection for me with Hull. But I married a Harrogate man, and we went to live in France for a little while, and we literally said, right, we're desperate to get to Yorkshire, and where will we go? We literally did that on the map and landed just outside Beverley, and never a better moment in our lives than that. There's no method to what we did, but we have had the most amazing experience living and bringing up our kids in this area. And I always call myself, the blow-in from Northern Ireland, but people accept the fact that, difference is good sometimes. And, recently at an event, and there was still, some people who are still thinking, we're still at the end of the train line, we're still at this. And I said, you got to stop thinking like that. You've got to really look back and see how well you've done, over the past 10, 15 years. And a lot of things, all roads lead to Hull right now. And this is our moment to really show people how it's done, to be honest.
100%. And I think, doing things like this, sharing, getting used. I think we're going to look at technology in a complete different way. And I think you will. I don't know if it was Paul or you alluded to it, Christina. But I was reading something, and I'm a big fan, in terms of tech and the way we communicate and the art of communication. And it's a bit like, if we were just doing a normal podcast, we love the podcast because we're in the studio, we can see each other, and we can bounce off at each other, and we can just have a real good rapport. Bringing the video again into it, it's still the same because we can see facial expressions. I couldn't get my mic working earlier, so I was able to do my jazz hands to you. It was all cool, right? And I think communication, for many years, I think we've gone backwards. Trying to use our two thumbs and put it into 146 characters to say how we're feeling, just don't do us justice as human beings, And I was reading back on history about, cavemen and reading facial expressions, because it's always fascinated me. I once went on a course about this guy basically read me. Before I'd even said anything, he could read me. And I thought, this guy's a bloody magician or a con artist or whatever's going on. And he broke it down real simple, and he said, as human beings, we used to communicate before language, before spoken word, with facial expressions. He said, so a lot of the times what we're thinking does come across on our faces, doesn't it? We're very visual. I was like, right. And he said, so you got to understand when you're communicating, and I think you see this, don't you, Paul, when you're learning. When I learn things, I have to watch a video and I have to sort of be immersed in it. I'm a very kinesthetic learner. Yeah, that's just the way I work. But when we're communicating, and we've all done this, how many times have we read a text message or an email, and what was in that text message, you've just completely taken it the wrong way. You're
in at the time.
Yeah. We do this in our man club leaders, in our facilitators page. I refuse where I can to do text messaging because it doesn't come across right. And we send voicemails, but we started sending video messages now, haven't we, Paul? So we can really like express what we mean, not only in the words we say, but in our facial expressions, and really give that communication the actual effort and energy that it needs. And I think in the world we're living now, we do have throwaway comments and throwaway bits. And I think where I'm heading with this is, back to that sort of fake news. I've just really struggled a lot with the amount of fake news what's being out there, and I think it's making sure, and I don't know how we educate people on this or what we can do on it. And I'd like to ask you, because you're from that sphere, but I think I've been checking my news sources. So I always go to the World Health Organization. They've got a fantastic WhatsApp number. We'll share it on the podcast. You can text them at any point and they will give you a daily report and actual true facts, what they are giving out to governments, right? So you're getting it from source. And every time I read it from source, what is actually happening, and then I go look at the news or the newspapers, what is actually happening to what is being reported is just sensationalized. And then what I'm then seeing is people getting a grip of that and then sending it out into petitions and all these other bits. And I got into a real good debate yesterday on this, actually. There's been a new policy put out by the government, a coronavirus bill. Massive bill, massive change. It affects all of our human rights. It affects everything as us as a country and as a people, right? And it's a massive bill and it's been pushed through Parliament. Now, I was having this big debate about sign this petition because it's wrong. But when you go through it all and you look at it all, and I might just look at this as glass half full, but it's written, with our European rights, as coming into it, and it says that European rights will precedent this at any cause. It's saying that it's had to be pushed through because we can't have full true debate, but it's gone through these sanctions. They've put procedures in place. Now, we can't please everybody. There's some bits in that bill that I don't particularly like. There's some bits in that bill that, right, but they've put it on a timestamp for 2 years. It's going to be reviewed within a minimum of a year. And what I like to call, they've done their best. They've empowered the NHS to make decisions. They've protected the people in the NHS in case things do go wrong, because things are going to go wrong with the amount of people they're putting into the NHS. And I always look at it, because I'm a big fan of leadership, is I think we've got a strong government at the moment. Whether we like them or we don't like the actual things, we're making decisions. And I think right now as leaders, we have to make decisions. Some of the decisions are going to be wrong. We know they're going to be wrong, but a wrong decision is better than no decision, because we at least move forward. And as a nation, we can come back together and we can push, we can pull, and we can drive that. And I just wanted to pick your brains, Christina, really, in sensationalising news and people checking the facts.
Yeah, it's a funny one. When I went through journalism, my journalism degree, I was taught sort of both by BBC and also by sort of red top sort of Sun journalists. And what they taught me has sort of stayed with me throughout my lifetime, which is that if you can write for the average 16-year-old, you can make yourself understood and a message translated easily. Now, what's happening at the minute is that we all think, whether we're keyboard warriors or whatever, or bloggers, we all think that we can write to inform others. What's happened along the wayside is that news reporting hasn't stayed as the objective beast it should be. When I was taught to report objectively, not get involved in the subject, just report honestly, factually accurately. And what's happened is that social media over the past 10 years has taken over. People haven't gone to credible news sources to get their information. They've gone to social media. And don't get me wrong, these petitions all have their place. And if you get over 100,000, it goes to Parliament. But I actually think some very clever people have been working on these policies for a very long time. When I was still involved at local government, press level, and in news, COBRA and government legislation and policies have all been written 15, 20 years ago, if God forbid this ever were to occur, what we're experiencing right now. So these policies have all been written with the emphasis on rule by possible success rather than chaos. If we all lived like Animal Farm, it would just, the whole place would just be a riot. People need structure. They need to get information, that's correct. They can't police who's going to read that information. They can't police how somebody's going to respond to that information. But what they really need to do is remain objective and set up policies that, yes, we mightn't all agree with right now, but they're there because the grand majority have looked at this scenario and said, if something like COVID-19 were to occur, let's create a structure. Let's create a process where we can start, but we can change. And I think that's what people need right now, whether it's, people, going back to Moodbeam, people setting prompts 5 times a day to check in with their staff, whether it's people, setting schoolwork, like my two, my husband set up the schoolwork, if you like, for the day. They've got 3 lessons this morning and a couple of things this afternoon. But, children need structure, so do adults, whether it's we check in with the news, eating our breakfast, which I do, check in at lunchtime and then see a little bit at the 5 o'clock announcement. People need structure. When it comes back to reporting news, we can't police how people read it. We can't police necessarily how people respond to that. But if you try and keep as objective as possible and report the facts, that's all you can do. That's all you can ask for.
I think the challenge we've got there on things like this, and especially in this time, is once it starts getting sensationalised and going off on one. I got sent this message about signing this petition, and then, as I always do, I like to just check my facts. And I thought, what I'll do is before I read any of the petition, I'll go read all the facts. And I had now better to do, and I like reading policies because I'm a bit of a geek. And I just went through and I just looked at it, and when we're managing risk, we've always got to look at the worst case. When we come back to our mental health, Paul, when you spoke about your mental health, it had to get worse before it could get better. Is that true?
Yeah, it went to as far as it could get without taking my own life before I came back from it. And I openly speak about that now to people, because I think when I go out in the workplace, if I'm honest and I can be relevant to people, they'll be honest back to me. Exactly
that. And I think reading what's going on at the minute, we've got to put tools and mechanisms in place to empower people. So if people aren't behaving, we can enforce it. Yeah, it does affect our human rights, but we've got to move forward. So I think without further ado, though, we hadn't even started the questions, Paul, and I knew we wouldn't. No, we wouldn't. But let's get this back. Let's get this show on the road, Paul. Enough productions. Come on, let's get at Christina. Come on. First question.
I'm ready.
What are 1 to 3 books that have greatly changed or influenced your life?
Wow. Okay. I was a complete and utter bookworm as a kid. I don't get a chance really to read so much physical books at the minute, more podcasts and audibles. But I think one of the books that impacted on me as a teenager was a book by Jill Morell and John McCarthy, and it was Some Other Rainbow. And it was about his incarceration sort of in when he was kidnapped in Beirut back in the day, when they used to sort of kidnap sort of officials, government officials and reporters. And I knew from an early age that I wanted to be a journalist. And many things in my sort of young life made me want to, I was desperate to tell the truth. Rather than somebody else hear it sort of in Chinese whisper. So I was always motivated through my dad mainly. He was a journalist for some time, that I wanted to be one. And when I heard that a journalist had been sort of kidnapped in these conditions, I totally immersed myself in that book, because I thought someday that could happen to me, because at the time I wanted to be an investigative reporter. I wanted to go into, obviously growing up in the Troubles in Northern Ireland, I always wanted to try and see both sides of the story. And I think that really impacted on me, because it was told from both Jill, who was his partner back in London, and John, looking back on, what he had written when he was incarcerated, if you like. And what that showed me early on in sort of my teenage years was that nobody can really tell you better than yourself how you respond to something. And I suppose maybe this latches back to the mental health thing, but my brother, I had 3 brothers in the police force growing up, and my the youngest brother got shot and injured in an IRA incident, and the guy that was with him on duty sadly lost his life. So that I was 13 at the time, and I think I could have gone two ways there, as has happened back home. Is that, good grammar school education, family who were very grounded and very unbiased, if you like. You weren't told to play with just one section of the community. It was very open, but we lived in a very remote area, and I could have easily just hunkered down into myself and introverted completely, or I could have tried to retaliate in some way. But I learned from my brother, really, who was injured. He said, "I don't hold a grudge, neither should you." And that was a big moment for me at 13. And then I had older brothers again who had, different issues going on, sort of that externally and internally. And that all impacted on me because I was the last of 5 children and the only girl. And once the novelty wore off of having a girl, I just became the listener because I was last in the pecking order. And I think that book really impacted on me because they were from very different lives. They, thank you very much. That's my hubby bringing me a fresh brew. He's well trained, isn't he? Thank you. That impacted on me because she was very educated lady. John, again, well schooled, but one was a risk taker and one wasn't. And that, for me, at the age of 16, reading that was like, only you can really decide how you report something. Now, they could have reported it hearts and flowers and everything's wonderful, but the relationship suffered as a result of what happened between them. But it was so beautifully written. That was a fantastic book. There's far too many to mention, so I'll come up right up to date to the most recent one, and that's Michelle Obama's book, Becoming. Now, that to me, she is the epitome of a real woman, if you like. She played the part and she dressed, as the First Lady of America and living in the White House. But her book takes us back to sort of South Side Chicago, where she brings in, and you can almost smell the food being made and the sights and sounds of growing up with uncles who were just ready to have a party every evening, street food. And then this other side of her where she really wanted to make a difference in the world to women and, the matriarchs in her life and the young girls around her who thought they weren't good enough. And obviously being Black and going into, white side education was massive, but she just took it. She took it on the chin, and she was just, her brain was almost too big for her age at that point, but you can see how she plays out throughout the book and becomes the woman that she is today. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Love that one.
So that's it.
Great one.
Right. You'll get the next question. Go on.
I'll answer the next one. What is your feel-good song or a piece of music that gets you focused and really makes you happy?
Oh, wow. Again, I always wanted to be a music journalist. I grew up reading NME and, crying and everything in between and wanting to be that next sort of, rock star journalist. But so hard because so many different songs evoke so many different memories. Kenny Rogers evokes memories of my dad dancing around the kitchen like a lunatic, trying to get my mum into a better mood because he'd annoyed her over something. But then you've got Dolly Parton again, who my youngest is hilarious. She stuck on a wig the other day and started singing 9 to 5, so that's a recent memory. But for feel good for me, to get me in the zone, is Coldplay every time.
I like
they're, from that very first video of him walking along the beach, totally authentic, rain splattering his face while he's trying to sing this really deep melody, with Yellow, right through to, Fix You. They're all there. Every single bit of them makes me jangle, it's just really good music.
And I think Coldplay, he's just a great storyteller, isn't he? And then he just brings it in. He takes you on like this story with peaks, troughs, and just whisks you away to another life, doesn't he? I think I'm a big fan of it. I like Coldplay.
My son's been to see Coldplay a couple of times, and I wasn't a fan of him originally. But because he has his music on all the time, it's been forced on me, but it's come to a point where I actually really do like him now. And in my bar, we tend to, me and him, just put Coldplay on in concert, and we're away. We've got no troubles at all, just me and him and Coldplay.
Oh, it's fantastic. If you follow him on Twitter and Instagram, he does these sort of sessions now where he'll get people to sort of type whichever song of Coldplay's that they want to hear, and he'll just get the piano out and he'll sit there at 2 o'clock in the morning because he can't sleep. He has real problems sleeping with COVID at the minute, and just listening to the guy speak, you realise just how much he loves to connect with people. So yeah, it's really worth a listen. It's really, really good.
Really, Paul. I think, and it was interesting because I've got him on my list that I'd love to go see perform.
Me too.
I've only recently got into him really because it's one of them hidden. Oh, 1 second, my daughter's phone's going off.
That's all right.
1 second. Yeah, he's one of them people I'd love to go see live. I think things like that, innit? It's experiencing music at the moment, and trying to all them little things that we take for granted we can't go do at the moment, which is just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, no, seriously. If you want to get a good vibe with Chris Martin, literally just follow him on Instagram, and he just gets the piano going, and you're taken away from all of the troubles for a while. It's really, really good.
It's right. This is one of my favourite questions. This one.
Brilliant.
What purchase of £50 or less has most positively impacted your life in the last 6 months?
We can't say Moodbeam.
No, we can't say Moodbeam. That's bang on the price. No, do you know what it is? And you're going to laugh. Pillows.
Hello.
Pillows. I have a real thing about pillows, and I'm not the best of sleepers, I have to say. My sleep has been seriously affected just sort of throughout my life of from early starts trying to create the news before everybody gets up so that they can read it or watch it, right through to now where I can survive on 4 or 5 hours a night's sleep, and then I'm buzzing again because my brain's just going. But I have a back problem and a neck problem, and I just have gone through so many different pillows in my lifetime because none of them have felt right. And literally, I spent probably about 40 quid on a set of pillows, and they've totally changed things for me. I know it sounds really daft, but I can't explain my pillow.
Where they're from for any listeners? Where they're from so they can check.
Well, trust me, they're Dunelm Mill. Amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah. The bag that we all
literally. I've tried all sorts of. I've bought herbal ones. I've gone on to all these different hippie sites, thinking, I need to have this Z-shaped one or this or that, and no, Dunelm Mill.
I always remember when my wife was pregnant with our first child, Evie. She bought this pillow, and when I say a pillow, well, she named the pillow Gerard Butler. The pillow was huge. It was like a big L-shaped pillow that she cuddled with a bump and everything.
Oh, they're amazing, yeah.
So if you've got a pillow that works, I used to see I still fight with her to get out the pillow. You get the pillow.
I've got one of them. I've got one of them. I don't call mine Gerard Butler. I'll stop there. I've got one of them pillows on. They're absolutely fantastic.
They are incredible. I remember, baby bumps. When you can't sleep properly, you just rest it on the pillow. But there was no room for the hubby in the bed at the time. It was massive. Yep. You got to have a good pillow.
I had to sleep in a spare bedroom with that one because I had an operation last year and I had my tonsils out and I was quite ill. So they bought me the pillow and I was in the spare bedroom. Oh, I didn't want to go back into my normal bed. I'd be done.
Well, my friends laugh at me. I'll go down south to see my bestie from the age of 11, and she'll pull up and she has half the car's full of pillows because I've got to bring my pillows with me wherever I go.
Do you see why I like that question, Paul? Because you weren't expecting that, was you?
No.
Right. Next one, Liam. Go on.
Next one. So, do you have a lesson from a failure of yours?
Oh. I've always been a bit of a crowd pleaser. I've always been sort of, I've always tried to laugh my way out of a crisis, to be honest. And I've always seen humour as a great sort of antidote to every situation. But I think it's been my downfall in becoming a bit of a doormat for people who just, you get toxic individuals, don't you, who think, okay, she's so soft and sweet and smiley and pleasy, I'll give her, bit of a boot and see how she reacts. And I think it's taken me to my 40s really to say to people, look, this is me, this is the way I am. I'm not going to suddenly change for you or for anybody. If you don't like me, switch off. And it's amazing. I had a bit of this sounds, but those closer to me will understand it. I had a bit of a cull. Sounds quite cruel because I am a touchy-feely, lovely, loving, huggy type person. But when people are toxic, you got to just move on. And it's taken me to my late 30s to get rid of a couple of individuals who have hung on for too long. And my gran used to have a phrase, they could suck the life out of a battery. It's all of that sort of stuff. But if anything is making you feel a bit crappy about yourself, walk away.
And I share that with you 100%. We talk about this a lot, don't we, Paul? And I think that's been one of my sort of biggest learnings these last couple of years. Because obviously in the work I do, and the same with yourself, we're always connecting with lots of different people. But you can only be present for so many people. It's a challenge. And we've had this many times with the work we do. I always remember when we first started doing the Man Club, we used to have a Facebook Messenger page. We'd have people messengers in, and some of these guys were very suicidal, distressed, and I'm not a trained professional. I can't cope with that, deal with that, and that was taking me out of my relationships with my family. I remember taking my wife on a date, and I'm sat outside the restaurant on the Messenger page talking to someone, and that was when I first started to realise about circles and what I wanted to do with my circles. And I had to have a real tough call, and luckily Luke had been through a similar sort of thing at Andy's Man Club, on a bigger level, and we just had a big conversation about we've got to put our masks on first, don't we, Paul? We talk about this all the time, and
yes.
Talk to us, Paul, about the mask story. Let's see if you remember it. Let's call you out, Paul. You tell me this.
Yeah. What it is with a mask, if you're on an aeroplane and the plane's coming down and the oxygen comes down, whose mask you put on first? Well, you put your mask on first, because if you don't put your mask on first, you can't help anybody else. So we say at the Man Club as well, we've got to be honest, we've got to be real and raw. And if we turn up at the Man Club, and I'm on a journey, I've had an history of mental health for over 10 years. If I go to the Man Club on a Monday night and I'm not in a good space where I believe I can facilitate and lead the group, I'll just say, look, I want to use a club like anybody else. And then other facilitators will take over. And I'm probably the same as you, Christina. I always was a people pleaser. I was always the one who put a bit of joviality amongst everything. And I used to believe that because I led Andy's Man Club Hull, I had to be positive all the time, when that wasn't the case. So anyway, somebody gave me a big kick up the backside. I don't know who it was, but it ain't far from us now. And I learnt that I had to be honest. For people to be honest with me, I had to be honest with them. And I always make sure that my mask's on first before I can help other people.
And I think what I love that story is, because I share the same. We end up being a doormat. We try and please everybody, and then what you end up doing is, you end up getting this spin, don't you, where you've pleased nobody, especially not yourself, and then you take it on your nearest and dearest, don't you? And you're not present for people. So I think I'm with you. We call them drains and radiators.
Drains and radiators.
Yeah, so you've got to surround yourself around radiators, get nice and warm, have good cosy chats, and suck in that heat. Understand sometimes we can become our drains ourselves, can't we?
Yeah.
And hopefully you've got enough radiators around you who'll patch you up and unplug the leak and sort you back out.
I absolutely love that. My close friend, sadly she's no longer with us, but we read that out actually at her funeral, and Vicky used to be, she had the most amazing phrase. She used to say, "They're better for knowing." And I'd never heard of that before I met a Beverly girl, but it's so true. If somebody is a bit steely and frosty, actually, if you still continue to be that giver, you do break through and you see the real person. Some people are worth persevering over. If they're not toxic, they're maybe just vulnerable. And she used to say, oh, such and such, oh, they're better for knowing. They're better for knowing, girl, but don't be a drain, and all that. And honestly, that is really, really hit a chord with me, because Vic used to say that. That's amazing.
And I think we see this a lot, don't we, Paul, sometimes with the Man Club. We'll sometimes get people who think it's a paid service and forget that we are all just volunteers. And sometimes they will lash out at us. And I always say to the guys, sometimes the guys take that personal, and it's about making sure that we don't take that communication personal. But that is the challenge, isn't it?
We can only do our best, can't we? On each and every week, we can only do our best.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you're an empathetic character, you're going to take it in. This is what my only worry, and I've voiced this before, so it's not for the first time, when it comes to mental health first aiders. I think you've got to look after yourself and put your mask on first, because naturally you will be drawn to try and solve somebody else's problems. And that's where you've got to become a newsreader, almost like an anchor, and say, okay, I've got to be objective here. I'm taking in what you're telling me, and I'm going to try and direct you to the right bit of help, but don't keep it in there. It's got to go to those who can help, because you'll just keel over and end up the one who's vulnerable. So it's and
I think you make a great point. And I think this is the reason why the work we do does work, and we have and this is why people sometimes don't understand what we do over, with the work in the Q&A, is Paul, when he mentioned about me giving him a big kick up the backside, what we do there, and believe it or not, we actually just listen. We don't actually solve problems. And, I'm in the background, making sure Paul was trying to take things on and solve people's problems. I know, because I did the same thing when I was leading Hull. You try and fix everything, and all of a sudden you lose focus about what you're actually doing. So like us, when we go to Andy's Man Club, we get there at 6:15. We have a meeting for 15 minutes. We solve some problems there. We run the club at 7 o'clock. We finish at 8:30. And we don't do anything else other than that. And, we've come, and I think by doing that, you can help more people. And by doing that, that does impact on more people. And we've seen, hence why we're doing all different things. Paul doing things with Hope and me doing things with my own business. We can keep that very pure and very simple at what it does. It's back to your point that's ringing true. You'll know this with your background. And what you're doing now with your product, you're trying to design a product that is simple. That's what you're trying to do, right? I'm trying to deliver services myself and my own business with my team that are simple. And simple, I have this quote written down. I don't know whose quote it is, but I have it written down in my book every time. It's at the front of my book. Simple isn't easy, right? And simple just isn't easy, a simple communication actually isn't easy. It's just not easy. A simple product isn't easy. I remember looking at your one of them talks you did, Christina, of all the different incarnations of the Moodbeam with different buttons and different widgets. Now I'm sat there like, yeah, that's brilliant. It all looks brilliant, and it should have it. But actually wearing the device, using the device, it's too complicated. I just want to press the button. And but we always want more, don't we? But simple.
Well, this is it. I have a phrase, and I use it quite a bit at the minute, is that don't overtake it. Don't overtake it. You've got, if a car drives, let it drive well, make it comfy. Don't stick 400 buttons on the front, because you'll have an accident. Don't overtake life. And I think what we're experiencing at the minute is that, in its truest form, is that keep it simple, keep the lines of communication simple. And I learned that, and I love that phrase at the front of your book, because, I can't remember who said this one either, but the most difficult thing in life is to have make yourself understood. And it really is that. I think it was somebody like Errol Flynn or something, but it really, that is it in a nutshell. And it is really, really hard to make yourself understood.
Well, it's interesting, Paul, because the next question was, Paul, what was the next question?
What is a favourite quote or saying that if you could share with anyone in the world, what is it and why?
It's by a woman called Gloria Hunniford. Now, she is a Northern Ireland presenter.
Yeah.
I think she still does present, actually. And she said once, she said, make sure that the two things you invest wisely in are a good pair of shoes and a good bed. Because if you're not in one, you're in the other.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
Love that.
I like that. Love that.
Love that. Love that. Are you going, Paul? You go with this one.
Go on then. In the last 5 years, what new habit or belief has had the most profound effect on your life?
Wow. Yeah, again, I think it's the whole self-awareness thing. The whole sort of realizing what things make you tick, what makes you happy, do more of it, what makes you unhappy, step away from it. And I think I was never really allowing myself to be aware before, but obviously, you know, having a Moodbeam on me and some guys for the past 4 years has really made me stop and look at what the triggers are, you know, what's making me react in a certain way, remove myself from those things. It's just really that ability to stop for a second and what might have seemed historically self-congratulatory and go, actually, do you know what? That was a really good day. I did such and such, and that made me feel I'm buzzing now, you know? And I think that's just really having that mentality ingrained in me.
Love that. Love that, Paul. Love it.
Right, go on.
One not long ago, this actually for you, Christina, but knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to yourself at 18 and what advice should you have ignored?
Listen to myself more rather than trying to take advice from others. Go with your gut. And there's been a lot of studies carried out in this as well to do with anxiety and gut enzymes and how that impacts on the brain. But really go with your gut. If something leaves a bad taste in your mouth, it's generally not right for you. If it's that person, that relationship, that job, that whatever, walk a different way. You know, I say that to my girls every day. We go for a one daily exercise with the dog and they're on their bikes or their hoverboards or walking, and they'll go, and I'll say, which direction today? And they'll go, that way, Mum. And I think we should apply that, you know, without trying to be too profound. We should apply that to every day of life. Is that, what direction am I going to go today? Because, you know, I've been there. I've had postnatal depression after the birth of my second daughter. I've had a close family who have attempted suicide. I've, you know, lost friends to it. And I've seen a lot of tragedy, but I've equally seen a lot of love and happiness in my lifetime. And I think if you leave the door open to, you know, what you know, not what, just having the same life from now on, this is what my life looks like, then you leave yourself vulnerable for things happening again. I'm not saying it flippantly, I'm not saying it's as easy as that. We all have our own triggers, but I know that when I've spoken to people who have suffered from depression on different levels from myself at the time, and it was depression in its truest form, you honestly think that that's just how you are all of the time. You think that you just plateau at being miserable. Why would anybody want to be around me when I'm like this? What company am I? Oh, I don't feel very sociable. You know, we all have glimpses of that. And I think if you surround yourself with like-minded people who'll either know when to laugh you out of it or know when to leave you alone, I think that's where it's key. Because, you know, our first trialer was a guy who'd struggled with depression for 30 plus years. And at that stage, it was a clunky MVP, a little sort of, you know, looked like something you'd open your garage door with. But the mentality was there, would you press this button? And he trialed it with us. And at the time, we had to extract the data and put it onto, you know, a screen. And it was the bigger the dot, the more times it had been pressed in that hour. And he had loads of blue dots and then little yellows. And he went, well, that can't be mine. And we went, well, you're the first one who's ever tried it, so it's got to be yours. He goes, no, that's not mine. And Jonathan knew him quite well. And he says, well, that can't be mine because I'm a miserable bugger, were his words. And we said, well, it is yours. And we showed him that, you know, we kept his details private. We said, you go and log into that and see if that's yours. And he goes, yeah, that's mine. And what it taught him was that he knew he was on a trial, but what it also allowed him, that if you're using something like Moodbeam, and you honestly think that you plateau at blue, there are those moments, whether it's through the prompts now or whatever else, that self-acknowledgement where you actually are okay.
Yeah.
That's yellow. And just having some of those yellows in his day really encouraged him. Now, you know, it totally changed his mindset. I think he's in, you know, a different sort of place, sort of emotionally and geographically, and those people who weren't supporting him and having his back, he's no longer around. So he's had to make changes in his life. But I think it's that whole, I think it's that whole mentality that surrounds, if you think you're like that all of the time, you're actually not. There are those moments where you're feeling okay. So let's go and see what those moments are and do more of that.
That's the one. That is the one. And Paul, are you going with this next one?
Yeah, I love this question. We all at times feel burnt out, unfocused, unenergized, overwhelmed. What do you do? And if helpful, what questions do you ask yourself?
Wow. I think I sort of, well, I'm quite an emotional person anyway, but I like to think that I'm there for others at the same time. But if something overwhelms me, I try and learn from that experience. So if something triggers me or moves me, I try and learn from it and see that the next time that happens, like, you know, my dad passed away last year. That was massive. That wasn't unexpected. But because I've got through that, the other things I cope with better. So it's almost like taking a positive out of a negative experience, learning how, what helps you cope is really, really valuable. I think I've answered that.
Yeah, you have. And I think what I take from that is, and you like to reflect why you're feeling like that, explore it, and then try and turn that around for something for good. And I think the point you sort of share there is, you know, and I've lost a parent, and Paul, you have as well, haven't you? And I think I take from what you mentioned there is, it was one of the most darkest times for me when I lost my dad, because he was my ultimate leader, you know. But then flipping it round, and I always say this to myself when I get a bit upset, is I'm just so grateful I had that guy in my life to learn from, and somebody wouldn't have had that. So it's just using that pain to drive you, and that's how I cope with it. That's my sort of coping. And I think we all cope in mysterious ways, and I think, you know, it's things like sharing it, how it might help one and help another. So really appreciate you answer that in abundance. So love this one, Paul. Who in the world would you like to interview, past or present, and why?
Wow. I suppose my earliest one that I would have loved to have interviewed was JFK. Yeah. Obviously, he comes from a dynasty of characters. There's a lot of stories that have built up around that. His relationship with Marilyn Monroe, his relationship with Frank Sinatra, his relationship with lots of different people. But I would have loved to have really got to the nitty gritty of what made him tick as a person and what motivated him. Again, his wife, Jackie Onassis, again from a big dynasty, big family. But very graceful, very gritty woman. I would have loved to have got them, I'd interviewed them together and then separately to see if it all added up. Obviously, the one that everybody says now I'd love to have met him was Nelson Mandela. Really to go through that period of time in your life and still come out as an absolute winner. What DNA does that guy have, you know? Yeah. And just people like who were other people's heroes in their life. Like my dad's absolute hero, and he loved him, was Johnny Cash. And he went to see him, I think, with one of my brothers when he was very young. And again, you know, I've read about him in the past and the story of his life and, you know, the struggles that he had. But the guy, again, was a musical genius. And to be surrounded by the right people, his band at the time, he made these tweaks and said, no, let's stay, you know, toe the line, and, you know, and all these different stories. Like, we don't actually know if the prison song it actually was created, you know, then all of those things. I'd love to ask him, was that done for marketing or was that done for real? But yeah, there's just too many dimensions, really.
Love it. And you go the last one, Paul. 'Cause I think we've done that way apart from the last one.
Right, Christine. Is there anything we should have asked you but we didn't?
No, I think we've covered it, actually. I think I'm immensely proud to be connected to you both. Hull Lads and Andy's Man Club, and I think we covered it earlier on as to our connection and how we got to know each other, but we've covered that. But I think that's a really proud moment in my recent years, and don't underestimate what you're doing every day. So
that means a lot to us, and it's straight back at you. And I'm looking forward to having a proper brew with you, and seeing what we can do to make this world a little bit better than it currently is. So thank you for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And Paul, you got anything else to say?
No, just thank you to Christina. It's been about an hour and a half on it, but it's flown by.
It's a big special. The world needs to hear it, doesn't it? So it's been a big special this week.
It's been an absolute privilege.
So that's Leon checking out.
Paul checking out.
take care, guys.